Hi everyone. So today we are going to start diving deeply into Linux, and the best person to guide you through this phase of the study is, of course, the tech high priest, follower, and an ambassador of Christ. So I'm going to take you, and the very first thing we'll do, let's power on our virtual machine. In the previous videos, I showed you how to build an Ubuntu virtual machine. So you can, any of the Linux you've built in the past, Ubuntu, Kali, feel free to power them on, and we're going to start doing some really good stuff. In fact, I'm going to post the link to building an Ubuntu Linux virtual machine on VMware Workstation right here. We just look right here, you're going to see the link to it. So let's go ahead and power on our virtual machine. And for this, I will use Ubuntu Desktop. I would go ahead and have this one called this one, Tech High Priest Ubuntu Desktop. I'm going to power it on. And this is going to be our preferred operating system. As I explained to you in the introduction to this series, I told you that Linux was open source, which means that it's absolutely free to use. Some variations of Linux, like Red Hat Linux, it's also free. But however, if you need support or help on some of the software, you would have to buy a subscription with Red Hat for them to support you in your Linux operating system. So the very first thing we've done is to put on our virtual machine, and what we are using today is Ubuntu Desktop. Now, you can put on any Linux, it doesn't matter. Kali Linux, Arch Linux, Debian, whatever you prefer. Just use whatever Linux. The commands are essentially the same. Very same commands, and only a few things might change, and I will show them to you. I've powered on my virtual machine, and today we are using Ubuntu Desktop. We are starting with the graphical user interface, which means when you hear about graphical user interface, we just mean that you are going to be able to see pictures and images. And the reason for that is because a lot of you are coming from maybe the Windows background and you're not used to the black and white screen in Linux. So I'll go ahead and I will log in. Just start to log into your virtual machine. We will begin running some nice commands. So before we run some commands, let me remind you our previous conversation about kernel and the shell of a Linux operating system. So if you've ever had coconut before, this is the outer layer of the coconut. This is called the shell. And this layer is called the kernel. So the internal part is called the kernel. This is also a palm nut fruit. And this is the kernel right inside here. It's called the kernel. And out here, we also have what we call the shell. So the shell starts from there. So one thing I wanted to know is the kernel is the core of the operating system. That's where all the magic is happening. It communicates directly with the hardware, like your keyboards, your mouse, your RAM, your CPU. It connects directly and communicates with the kernel. Then we have the shell. The shell is the outer layer where you and I write commands. We write commands on the shell, and this shell sends these commands to the kernel. So the shell is like the middleman that interacts between you, the human, and the kernel over here who does all the work. So that's the Linux kernel. Think about this analogy. It's very easy. So we'll go back to our virtual machine, and we will start running some commands. So this is our Ubuntu Desktop. Again, the distribution doesn't matter. Do whatever works for you. I'll go ahead and I'll click start, and I will look at terminal. Now, this terminal is where we are going to focus today. So the first thing we are going to talk about is the very first command in Linux. But I want to show you something like on the graphical interface. The graphical user interface, we call that the GUI, right? If we hear about GUI, we just mean the graphic user interface. A lot of you come from Windows and you're not used to just a black and white screen. And so when we go here on Linux, all of this you see is the graphical user interface, graphics, meaning pictures. So for example, let us create a directory. Let us create a folder. So if I want to create a folder, I could just right click and I say new folder. It's asking for the folder name. I'll just call this folder James. Now hit OK. That's the folder it's created. It's called a folder. Most of the time in Linux, you will not hear the word folder, you will hear a directory. A directory. That's what we call a folder. And it's the same thing in Windows. If you go back to your Windows machine and you want to create a folder, I can right click. I can create another folder. This is my Windows machine, guys. I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to call it James also, and I'm going to hit enter. And this is another directory or folder that's called in the Windows section. So we are going to go back here. And that's the graphic user interface. You can move over here to files and open. You'll be able to see other files like your documents, your downloads, your music, your pictures. Now, we are going to start with the command line. We don't want to work with pictures. Again, it's very easy. You already know that because you're coming from Windows. However, we are going to use a very good tool that's extremely powerful. We call this tool the terminal. And you can do a lot more powerful stuff with the terminal instead of seeing pictures. So we are going to go back to our screen and we are going to open our terminal. So let me maximize my screen there and widen this. So I'm going to click here on start and I'm going to choose terminal. When you choose terminal, you find yourself here. So this is my username THP and this is the name of my machine at THPU desktop. That's what I call the machine. And we also see a $sign here, and then we see a prompt. Now, I don't want you to worry about this right now. I'll explain that to you. But the very first command that we are going to write, exciting, is like the very first command when God created the earth. He said, let there be light. He wants to see what's happened. Let there be light. And that command in Linux is called ls. ls is just like, hey, show me everything around you. I want some light. I want to see what's around you. It's going to list the content of a directory. Because at every time in your Linux operating system, you're somewhere, you're located somewhere. So where am I right now? And I'm going to do an ls to list the content of this directory. I want to see everything around me when I hit enter. And there you go. It shows me a lot of stuff around me. Look at this. I have a desktop. I have documents. I have downloads. I have pictures, public, snap, and templates. I'll go ahead and change this background to white so that you guys can see some of these dark colors, like the blue colors. Let me change the background. So yeah, profile. I'll change this background color. I'll just comment on name, and you will see it's checked here as use color for system themes. But I can uncheck this one and I choose maybe genome DAG, GNOME Solaris DAG. There are different colors you could use. I'm going to use GNOME light. I want one white background. And I'll click OK. That's fine. So you can clearly see I run the command ls, and that command just lists the content of a directory. It just tells you what's inside of a directory. So now I want to know my location. Where am I right now in this machine? So to know my location, I'm going to write a command called pwd. I'm going to increase the font. The command is pwd. It means print present work directory. I hit enter. It tells me I'm under home php /home/tsp. If you don't understand any of these things, don't worry. I promise you it's easy. I'm going to explain as we proceed. But the very first command lists everything. Right now, we are inside the machine. We cannot see anything in this machine. We have no idea what's here. So for me to say, let there be light, or I want to see what's happening inside this machine, I'm going to run the command ls. And that shows me everything in the machine. There is desktop, there's document, downloads, music, pictures, public, snap, template, videos. And this is with respect to my present work location. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to create a file. I want to create an empty file. Like you see me, I created a folder recently, but I just want to create an empty text file. I will just say touch, and I want to call the file mango. I'll just say touch mango, and I hit enter. And guess what? I've created a text file called mango. I'm going to write ls again to list the content of this directory to see everything right next to me and hit enter. And look at that. I see mango. So mango was successfully created. Now let's create another file. Let's touch apple and banana. You're going to touch apple. You can create all of them on the same line. It doesn't matter. Touch apple. Touch banana. Touch apple. Then banana. And then I hit enter. When I do an ls again, you see now I have apple. It's listed in alphabetical order. Apple, I have banana, and I have mango. I'm going to create one more file. I'm going to touch cat, dog, pig, and goat. So I'm touching a bunch of files here and I hit enter. And you would see if I do ls, you will see that it's created a bunch of files called goats, dog, pig, mango. So we have all of these files created, and they're just empty files. That is how you create a file in Linux, an empty file. You can use touch. There are many methods. And as we continue in this class, you will notice that there are so many ways of doing the same thing in Linux. So I'm going to proceed into the next part of this class, and I want to see more about this ls command. What is this ls? Is there a manual that I can have that explains to me how ls works? What does ls do? So in Linux, there is a command we call man. And by the way, I'm going to clear my screen because there's a lot of stuff on the screen already. I'm going to write the word clear, C-L-E-A-R, and I hit enter. Look at that. My screen is clear. So in Linux, I want to have a manual that is telling me all these commands I'm writing, what do they do? The command is called man, M-A-N, like a man. If you say man, and remember the last command I wrote was ls. I'm going to write ls, and then you hit enter. It starts telling you everything about ls. ls, list directory content. It will show you everything in the directory. And the synopsis, right? ls, and then you give the command. And then the description, ls, it lists information about files, the current directory by default. And then it gives you other options we can do for ls. I'm going to hit Q to quit, because right down here, you can clearly see Q to quit down here. So I'm going to hit letter Q, and there you go. I'm back to my terminal again. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to write more. I want to see more stuff or more properties about the files that I created. So I can write ls. I give a space with my spacebar, hyphen, LH. When I do that, I hit enter. Guess what happens? It shows me everything it showed me before, but with much more data. I'd like you to ignore all of this. And if you look here, we have the THP, and then the date that the file was created, the time it was created, and the name of the file, right? In fact, I created a file called end. So that's really funny. Okay. We are going to explain to you what all of this means. I'm just going to show you a little bit of something of that today. So if you look here at the beginning of the file, you're going to see something like a dash. Every time you see this dash here, the minus sign right there, the minus sign, that tells you that you're dealing with a file. It's a file. Every time you see the very first letter that starts with letter Z, it tells you are dealing with a directory or a folder. So it's called a directory or folder, right? In Windows, we call it folder, in Linux, we call it a directory. It's the same thing. So just remember that every time you see a minus sign, the end of this line, whatever is listed, for example, here is goats. Goat is a file. What about this one? I'd like you to tell me. What about pig? Let's draw the line and look to the beginning of the line. Again, pig is a file. What about templates? Let's try templates. Let's go to the beginning of the line. Oh, what's that? Template is a directory or a folder, but we're going to call it directory. Okay, guys, it's the same thing. So those are there to hint you what you're dealing with. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit more. I'm going to clear my screen. Now, there are other short ways to clear your screen. You can hit the control on your keyboard and you press letter L to clear the screen. Or you could just type clear, C-L-E-A-R. I'm going to hit control on my keyboard and the letter L for love. And that should clear my screen. My screen is clear. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is, if you look at this line, what does this line mean? I want to explain everything to you about this line. And for that, I'm going to try to increase the size of it so I can really explain more to you. So I just hit Control Shift and then the plus on my keyboard, and then it expands the text. So the very first thing you would see is THP. THP right here. THP. That's my username. Like for you to log into your computer, you have a username. For you to log into your email, you have a username. My username is THP. And it says at. At where? At this one, THP-U desktop. This is the name of this Ubuntu machine we are working on. I named it when I was creating this machine. I call it THP-U desktop. That was the name I gave the machine. So that's the name of the machine. And then if you see this squiggly, it means I'm at my home. And don't worry about that. I will explain in another chapter when I start talking about permissions. And finally, the dollar sign. The dollar sign just means this guy, who is the username, he has limited powers. Let's just remember that. He has limited powers. He cannot destroy your system. He cannot do whatever he wants. Whenever you see a dollar sign, it just tells you the person working here has limited powers. That's all it means. And then the next thing and the very last thing here is the prompt. If you look here, we see this blinking prompt. It's just blinking. It's a dot, like a pause. Okay, what does that tell you? It's telling you that you can now type a command. This is where you type your command. It's waiting for a command. So one more time, we're going to do our very first command, ls again, which to me is like the very first thing that God would say in scripture, right? In the very beginning, when the whole earth was dark, he created the world. There was nothing in the world. The very first thing he said was, ls, let there be light. Go read it. It's in Genesis chapter 1. And there was light. So right now, we have no idea of what is around us. Is there a fire around us? Which fire? Everything just looks like darkness right now. And then we are going to hit the command ls. ls. And I hit enter. There you go. I can now see, oh, right next to me, there is banana and dog, goat, music, snap, video, Apple, cat, document downloads. All of these files around me, right? I could not see them before. However, I also want to see more details about the files, to know which are the files and to know which are directories. Now, it's easy to know that if you look at the blue ones, they just mean directories. The black ones are just files. For example, this is just greater black. It's a file. The blue one is a directory. But I want it to be more professional and don't depend on colors. So I'm going to write ls-l, which means long listing. And I want to add an h, which means for human readable. I like to list a very long way that a human can read and easily hit enter. And I get way more information. So in summary today, we've talked about the Linux operating system. We've talked about it being open source. I've showed you the graphical user interface of Ubuntu. And also, we've worked on the very first command called ls. In the next video, we are going to be doing a lot more stuff. And I promise you it's so easy. I mean, this is a priest telling you that Linux is so easy. I'll guide you until you get there. God bless you. And hey, remember to subscribe on this channel. If you don't, I'm going to send a mail to you asking for an offering. So you better subscribe. Thank you and see you in the next video.